All right, and we are live on Facebook. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I don't know where these days go. I cannot believe it's already Thursday. Like, I feel like I was just sitting on my couch yesterday on Sunday. Like, it's crazy. I'm so excited about the friend that's joining us this morning. I had the pleasure of meeting her at a coaching skills camp a few years ago, and she just instantly became a soul sister. Her family is my family. Her daughters are my daughters, and I've been able to help her team over the years. She's helped me in my growth so much. She's one of my biggest mentors and confidants. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, tell you, I think most of us know who she is, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself because she's had some transition and new things that she's brought into her life in the last year or two. So Karina, take it away.
Good morning, guys. So Karina Loken, Houston, Texas. Very proud of my Loken group team of 86 and fairly new, I guess about 2 years in now as the OP of our first market center here in Houston also. So our team last year did just over 2,500 units and is still going strong.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So talk to us about talent. Tell us, typically I just let you go because you're awesome and you have a lot of information. So just talk to us about talent, leadership, emotional intelligence right now with so many people. I think people just want to know you teach so much. So what is talent looking like right now? Is it a good time to recruit? How are we leading people through this? I know you've had some pretty major emotional stuff happen through this on your team. So I'm sure there's been a lot of that. So just take it away.
Sure. Okay. Well, so I think first let's talk about actionables that we've done with our current talent, right? Because retention definitely was, the name of the game. And not retention from like a let's keep them with us, but a retention of let's keep them sane, right? And keep them above water and keep everybody's mindset where it needs to be. It was almost like we performed triage right off the bat. So I think that's an important piece of it first, right? Before you're going to start even thinking or accumulating new, you need to take care of your peeps. And honestly, that was really in now a couple of pretty interesting, I guess, quasi-crisis times that we've had in the last couple of years. First with Hurricane Harvey a couple of years ago here in Houston, and now, all this COVID stuff around the world. Our very first step is just to get on the phone with our people and call them one at a time, call them, make sure everybody's okay. A lot of people we're having, I don't know about you guys, we're having some of this like Zoom fatigue a little bit, webinar fatigue. My hips, I've like invested in a lot of icy hot patches at this point. But it's the one-on-one calls where people are willing to just kind of be more vulnerable and let a husband lost a job, or I'm scared, or I don't understand why all these people are panicking, like all these different levels of emotion that everyone has been experiencing. And one of the things that I think we've observed with our peeps has been almost like, if anybody's familiar with the stages of grief to acceptance, or it really almost starts with like denial and panic, but there are phases to get through acceptance. And there's kind of like, like anything else, it's kind of like a pendulum. And there's this middle lurch of kind of sadness, a little bit of depression. Like, is this really the way this is all going to be? And I think we've really seen almost everybody kind of go through that stage, and thankfully on the other side of it. But it's those who, and I saw this really cool graphic I was reading about change management, since we're talking about talent today, and taking any group of people through change, any kind of major change, and folks that don't ever kind of get out of that like funk in the middle and get to, okay, I'm going to accept this. I'm going to see this might be my new reality. I'm going to test the waters a little bit. I'm going to see what is possible. And then I get into like, okay, now I'm back in my jam again, right? Those people that don't get over that little middle hurdle get into hostility and resentment, and they kind of get trapped there. And so it was really important for us with our current folks to make sure that we honestly just kind of like were there for them, held their hand through those stages to get to the other side. That means you need to do some self-care also, right? You know, the book, Put Your Oxygen Mask On First. The airline always tells you, you have to take care of you in order to be able to take care of the rest of your peeps. And that's been really important for us too. I know about a week and a half in, it hit me. And and I just needed, you know, a couple of hours to like regroup and then resurface. But I knew it when it hit. So I think that self-awareness, you were mentioning emotional intelligence. One of the big pieces of EQ is self-awareness, right? So to number one, be recognizing when you need that energy shift for you, but also be open and willing to admit it, because I think that's hard for some people too, to admit that they need to slow down for a minute, that they aren't, you know, a superhero. Take your cape off, take a deep breath, go for a walk, take a nap, eat a healthy meal, do what you need to do, and then put your cape back on, right? But we've got to take a little bit of a break so that we can take care of everybody else and keep our energy up. And I think it's important to have kind of an energy plan, not just for you, but to help your people figure out what does bring them energy. A lot of the transition that we're seeing for people, even getting into that acceptance, is seeing that the things that gave them energy before, they can't have right now. Right. And none of us, I mean, for Pete's sake, we all use it in our scripts, like takeaways stink, right? So it's important, I think, for all of us to really hone in on specifically with people, what is your energy plan? What are you doing for yourself? One of the girls on our team, like, her release is spinning class. Well, guess what? She can't do spinning class right now, and she doesn't have Peloton. She went to spinning because she wanted to be around people. It's not even just the spinning and the competition, it's being in the room with other sweaty people that brings her great joy and just like relieving her of stress, right? Well, she can't be in a room of other sweaty people right now. And and it's that physical personal interaction that's a big piece of it. So, you know, how do we help her figure out, okay, what can you do right now that can really help you relieve stress, right? And can help you stay really high minded. Guys, that stuff, I don't think that can be discounted. All right. So, so just taking care of your people and keeping an eye on them. Now, as far as talent and finding new talent, um, like I mentioned, part of our phone calls is also, you know, hey, we know where your job is, but is your spouse employed? You know, especially folks that rely pretty heavily on spousal income, or you know, have kids with other ex-spouses, and you know, that whole extra dynamic, worrying about people getting sick, kids shifting back and forth between houses. I mean, there's just so many dynamics right now. And we've even honestly gotten into some of those conversations with some of the candidates that we've talked to. People are getting a lot more personal. We've done quite a few interviews in the last few weeks, and it's really interesting that the difference even in those conversations, and to be ready for that, right? Part of doing great interviewing is staying really neutral, right? And if that's a skill, hopefully you've been practicing. Anybody who is on talent searches regularly, that neutrality is so important, and it's important with the people you currently have too, right? They're looking to you. Think one of the very first things that I heard right after this COVID stuff started, it's another airline example, but if you think, I hopefully most of you have been on an airplane before, right? And if you've ever been on a plane when like really high turbulence hits, has anybody ever had that experience? Yeah. Okay. So you're on a plane, high turbulence hits. What's everybody do? Everybody goes and looks at the flight attendant immediately, right? And you all look to see, is the flight attendant freaking out, or is the flight attendant like just hitting the lock button on the soda cart and all is well? If the flight attendant's freaking out, you're going to freak out like naturally, right? If the flight attendant is pumping the brake on the drink cart and is like, okay, we're just going to lock this up so it doesn't roll. Would you like Diet Coke, regular Coke, or Sprite? You know, you're just calm and you feel like at peace of, okay, if they're not panicking, I'm not going to panic. So guys, put yourself in the place of that flight attendant for the people around you, right? Including your candidates, because we're also having some really wonky interviews right now too, because people's anxiety is just higher than ever. And it's making it a little bit harder to read some of our candidates. And we want to make sure that we're giving people a fair shake. But here's the reality: people are losing their jobs right now. People are getting furloughed, laid off, they have so much uncertainty, and there is a massive quantity of amazing talent right now out on the streets looking for jobs. Um, you know, like the opportunity right now to put your job posts out and have a wealth of stellar candidates is amazing. We've also internally had the conversation that, we have so many people that we know as an organization that internally have somebody they know that's lost a job but are just stellar. That's also an opportunity for us to have a little bit more of a targeted candidate audience, as opposed to just like the random who doesn't have a job right now. We don't personally have in all positions the bandwidth to sort through that many candidates. So, we've also talked about like, how can we be strategic in targeting specific groups, whether it's people we know or just really targeted posts of candidates that we can initially narrow the pool. And if you've been looking, let's say, like we had a really tough search for a long time on the bilingual talent that we were looking for. There right now, that this would be such an awesome time if you have something pretty specific that you're looking for, a skill set. We're hiring photographers right now. And that's always been a challenging thing to hire for. And we have 5 phenomenal photographer candidates right now. So like there are so many blessings for your business if you lean into this sucker and accept where everybody's at. But I do think that it's important for us to make some adjustments too, understanding the emotional state everybody's in, and digging into that. My interviews also are taking longer right now. I've never interviewed really on Zoom much. Like once or twice, I've done part of the interview process over video conferencing. And it's still something that I need more practice at. It's been interesting. I've learned a lot through all this too, because I've learned when I'm interviewing people, I'm really reading so much off of their body language and off of the energy that they're putting out, off of even like size, how they're breathing. I never even recognized I was doing that, honestly. I just, could walk in a room and be around somebody for a while and go, all right, they have great energy, but I couldn't put my finger on some of the pinpointed things that I was looking for or listening for. What an opportunity right now too, for you to get to that place of conscious, unconscious competence, right? It's that 5th level of, why haven't I been able to completely teach somebody else to do what I do? Well, right now I'm learning some of those things because it's stuff I was doing unconsciously. And right now I can't do them. And I'm realizing what some of those are. So it's been a great learning opportunity for me as well. But I have started planning in a little bit longer periods of time for conducting my interviews, to allow myself and that candidate to dig into whatever else needs to be digging into.
So true. I mean, it's so true. And I think like we have had, it's hard to keep people interviewees. Like I had one that I interviewed last week and she brought up Corona. And I said, and I usually try to coach people at the end of an interview if they're not the right match. And I just said, you don't have to tell people that right out of the gate. Like you don't have to explain your personal situation. You don't have to explain any of that, right? Like I know you feel like you need to, but you don't. Have you seen, Karina? We were actually surprised at we thought that the job market applicant wise would flood. And it's increased, but it hasn't increased as much. And I think it's because of the unemployment amount. I think people are saying, we're just going to ride this out. We get the extra $600 a week. Why don't we just wait? And that's been interesting. I think have you seen the same?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have more candidates like what you're saying. And I think a lot of people are being furloughed, which is great, right?
Yeah.
Not laid off. And so there are definitely people who would like to go back to their jobs. Right now, you consider People want anything that feels safe because most everything right now doesn't feel safe. Right? So, even in conversations with folks, they're looking for anything that has less change because there's so much change,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Mm-hmm.
so wherever they can find that constant, I think that they're still kind of hanging on to that, especially those folks that haven't like ridden through, all those process steps to get to, okay, so now how do we just do this differently?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I will say there are certain companies, and that's why I said we've kind of been looking also at targeting like Marriott. Marriott does a phenomenal training program. Their customer service, client experience is just top notch. And Marriott has laid off and let go a ton of people. Their occupancy, as everybody can imagine, has dropped to almost nothing. And they're laying off even like regional directors, like really, really stellar business people. And so, to find out what some of those companies are that have had to, just because of the nature of the industry they're in right now, lay people off, and it's going to take them quite a while to recover. I think that, the ones that you want, the candidates who have number one, understand business enough to know what's going to happen and how long it's going to take for some of that turnaround for their business, but also who are drivers and who've jumped right into the, okay, how do we do this? Like those are the kind of candidates we want anyhow, right? Those are the people who I think are starting to already look for positions, because the reality is they're not going to have a job to go immediately right back to.
You're
Oh,
absolutely right. Patty, you asked about a book on body language. I'm putting one in the comments. I also believe that emotional intelligence, everyone should read when you're dealing with people, because people's emotional intelligence also comes out with there it is right there. I know Karina and I have both studied a lot on this, a lot, because we are highly emotionally based individuals. And
the
so,
other thing to read, and you can just Google search this. I don't know about any particular book per se, but sensory acuity.
yeah, that's a great book.
Sensory acuity is, if you research that, that's like if when people get embarrassed and they blush,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's something that's an unconscious reaction that their body has. They can't control it. Blushing, usually people know that they're starting to blush. They can feel the heat go up in their cheeks, but there's so many things that we do. Our lips actually sometimes like get a little bit more swollen, or twitches around the corners of your eyes. Have you ever seen somebody's nose flare that they don't know that their nostrils are flaring when they get mad, but or maybe some other reaction? But it's those things that your body does unconsciously that you can see as the onlooker, but they have no idea is the reaction that they're having. And it can tell you so much about what they're feeling and what things might be triggering them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's about meeting people where they are, right? And we have to understand that not everybody is going to be in the same place. And people that are typically, and I think, Karina, you would agree with this. So I'm suggesting to all of my clients that they're reading the descriptive reviews of their KPAs every week, because this at these times people's behavior is heightened. And so a lot of what you're seeing is their natural behavior. It's just the adaptive behavior is different, right?
Mhm.
Because of the situation that they're in. And that can be a lot different than normal. Would you agree, Karina?
100%.
Yeah.
We also, it's by the same company that did this emotional intelligence book. The Gallup does all these different little polls. The Gallup book series has a book called Strengths Finder,
Mm-hmm.
that we've always used in our business.
Yeah.
And it's Strengths Finder 2.0.
Yeah.
And, all of the other assessments that we do for our hiring process are all very personality based. How we think, how we behave, like our natural behavior patterns, discs, all that. Strengths Finder really pulls out what your natural God-given strengths are.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we had learned a while back from Anna Kruger is to take the word strengths out and put the word motivator in.
Mm-hmm.
And that always really stuck with me. And so we've actually really been digging into people's strengths lists again. We don't ever, and they actually recommend and ask you to please not ever use it for reasons to hire or not hire what
Mhm.
people's strengths are. It's really just more of a way to understand how they think, how they operate, what really drives them. And that has proven in the last couple of days, especially as people's emotions are kind of hitting some new highs and they're having to realize and figure out, like, what's my new normal? How can I create my positive mindset in a different way? And to know what naturally motivates you, that
Mhm.
is helping so many people to isolate what their new possibilities can be, and for us to help kind of coach them through that.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Anna Kruger was supposed to be our guest tomorrow. And I think I decided this morning I'm going to ask her to come next week because tomorrow's Good Friday. And I want her to have a captive audience. But that's perfect because Anna's on our list to come on this call and actually talk about motivators and strengths.
Oh,
And I love what you said,
absolutely.
Karina, because it shouldn't be a decision making and hiring. And you also want to make sure, just like the KPA, that you're matching a person to a role where you're going to utilize their strengths, because if you're not, then you're not setting them up for success in the role,
Yeah,
right?
true. And honestly, I think there are very, very few roles that can't that you can't adapt to
Mhm.
what your strengths and
Thanks,
motivators
Anna.
are,
Yeah,
and
great
just do
point.
them a little bit differently. And I'll let Anna share her story because it was really powerful for our team to understand, like, even what she did inside of lead generating and how
Mm,
she just changed, her, just where she was doing it, how she was doing it, same exact activity, but
mm,
just in a way that was motivating to her
great
specifically.
point.
Um,
Yeah.
I was having a conversation the other day with one of our buyer agents, and she is a turbo achiever,
Mm,
and she's feeling a little bit of some extra stress because her husband lost his job. Well, that puts her achiever into overdrive.
mm,
And I don't think she even yet has realized the level of stress that she's just put herself under, telling herself that their family's fine. And they really are, thankfully.
mhm.
Financially, they're okay. But her achiever is her natural strength. Well, as most of us know, our strengths can also sometimes be our biggest weaknesses too, right?
Mm,
And so there's also, back to the emotional intelligence, a massive need for awareness around, hey, I got to rein that in a little bit too and not let it get the best of me so that I can
mm,
keep performing.
100%. I think that's a great point, Karina, and that it's the biggest coaching tool that you could use with your people once they're in the role to figure out how to modify action to their strengths. I love that. Andrew, did you have a question? And then we'll open it up for
Yeah,
questions for Karina.
quick two-part question. Karina's up the street for me, so I promised her a question. So part one, you touched on it a little bit, and I've got a rock star helping me look for talent. How do you really know or trust or believe that the amazing admin that just got laid off from Halliburton or furloughed or whatever the word is, that you're not going to waste a whole bunch of time, effort, and money training them up, and then as soon as their position opens, they're going to run back to their position? So that's part one, kind of hiring for the team. And then part two, profit share is sort of my passion. How are you and Randy, your TL, how are you guys looking at bringing in people, for example, that are non-agents? Like, I'm getting people from 2 years ago that said, hey, I don't have a job. I just signed up for online classes. I want to be a real estate agent, versus not being that agent to reach out to the 41% of the Redfin agents that just got laid off, or the 15% of the EXP people. Like, how do you marry those two? That's my question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with part one. Part one, there is no guarantee,
Mhm,
right? Um, However, here's the thing, and this is true all the time: COVID, no COVID, hurricane, no hurricane, normal life every day. Just truth that when first of all, you need to have total clarity in your mission, your vision, and especially your values.
mhm,
Okay. And any candidate that you hire that becomes a part of your organization, when you are in full alignment with that person, particularly around those values, like, that's going to immediately be so important. But they're going to want to be on the ship that you're sailing, and they're going to want to sail in the direction you're sailing it, right? And that feels so good. If that is truly the case, and they are in alignment with your mission, vision, and values for your organization, they're not going to want to go back to wherever they were before, because they're going to find and feel and experience so much value in this new place that they're in, that has just become a thing of the past. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But that is true every day of every year in every market, in every city. That just doesn't change. Like that's just hiring, right?
Yeah.
Is attracting talent to truly your core mission, vision, values for your organization.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you, and then it's your job to continue casting the vision for that, right? So I think that's where a lot of people also lose talent, is they forget to keep casting that vision. They forget to keep helping people connect the dots and vision cast for what their future growth will look like, but also setting really clear expectations that you're not going to be promoted in 3 months, right? Okay. And especially people who are coming in from any kind of a higher position, right? And they're kind of starting in a new industry, having to learn new stuff. It's going to be really important for very, very good expectation setting for all of us, bringing in people from other industries, other businesses, right? They're learning new skills. That's going to take some time, and they might be rock stars and they might know it, and they're going to be super driven. So what's the plan for that? But the more you can clearly set that up front, the more they're going to feel really good about where they're going.
Yeah, it's our job as leaders to keep them, to retain them, right? Like
100%.
yeah,
Yep.
I think that's the biggest message in all of that. Any other questions for Karina?
Well, he
I was
asked
going to say,
also
I
about,
love that.
Oh, hold on one second. He did. You're right. He asked something else.
yeah, he asked about bringing agents in. So I just want to make sure that I do point out the testing company, I forget their name. It's like a behind the scenes company that does all of the real estate exam testing. They shut down right now. And so
Pearson View.
thank you. The agents who are not licensed yet, they can't get licensed. They can do all of their online training and be ahead of the game there. But they haven't opened that back up yet. So I've talked to different people who are looking at doing like apprentice programs. They can absolutely circle prospect. You have to know the laws in your states. I know I see people here from different states on the list. So know what your state real estate commission guidelines are, right? But you know, we've talked about having people like do a circle prospecting campaign in their neighborhood where we can pay them, you know, for the nurtures up front. And so that we don't bankrupt our company, pay them, you know, just like we do our ISAs with mailbox money on the back end. That's also part of why we've looked at targeting people that know someone in our organization, so that there's more of a trust level on the compensation that we're looking to offer, and not have to pay all of the compensation as an upfront cost, because our business right now is just not in a position to sustain that long term with, you know, many multiple hires.
Yeah. 100%. Who had another question before we wrap up?
I was going to piggyback, or I was going to say that I love that you said that, Karina, because the mission, vision, values, any candidate that I've brought into our organization that is 100% in alignment with our mission, vision, and values, what I've discovered is they never had that wherever they were before. So they are in it all, like at the highest level. And any candidate that I brought in that maybe checked 2 of the 3 boxes, not all 3, usually didn't work out right. So that is such a vital piece not to skip, and have clear vision on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions?
No, and I have to hop off, you guys, because my leadership staff is meeting right now. So
Karina, thank you so much. She'll be back at 9:30 Pacific today, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central, and we'll be continuing the conversation for our West Coast folks. Bye, guys. And if you're staying on to pray, you can, we do prayer group right now. So feel free to stay on and pray with us. Thanks, Karina. Love you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye, guys.